Over 700 pedestrians and bicyclists were killed on Texas roads in 2019. The Texas A&M Transportation Institute is here to help provide resources to law enforcement officers so they are better equipped to enforce the laws and save lives. Law enforcement plays a crucial role in traffic safety and are a core part of the 3 E's of traffic safety, which include engineering, education, and enforcement. If you haven't already, we encourage you to view our video covering the state laws applicable to pedestrian and bicyclist safety, which can be found on the website shown here. We also have additional resources there, such as information on upcoming training workshops and enforcement brochures to use while conducting enforcement. This video will cover ways to enforce pedestrian and bicycle safety laws. We will be discussing the unique characteristics of pedestrian and bicycle crashes, steps to take to begin an enforcement initiative, demonstrating an example enforcement initiative, and resources to help you once you've made a stop. First, let's look at the unique characteristics of pedestrian and bicycle crashes. It is important to understand the types of conflicts that exist between drivers and pedestrians and bicyclists, and the laws that you might consider enforcing. At intersections and marked crosswalks, motorists are required to yield to pedestrians. Pedestrians have the right-of-way when they begin crossing when the walk light is on. Bicyclists have the same rights as motor vehicles. Drivers must yield to through bicyclists when turning left. Motorists must provide a safe distance between their vehicle and the bicyclist. Many driver behaviors affect the safety of pedestrians and bicyclists. Here are some steps to take to begin an enforcement initiative. First, think about where you want to conduct an enforcement operation. There are several ways to identify a good location. You may want to use crash data to identify areas of concern. Resources discussed at the end of the video, including how to obtain crash data, are available if necessary. Observational reports from fellow officers, city engineers, and even the public, such as call-in reports, are other options for identifying areas to target for enforcement. Ideal areas for enforcement include near schools, senior centers, downtowns, and other areas where there is pedestrian and bicycle traffic. Second, you will want to think about when might be a good time to conduct an enforcement operation. Pedestrian and bicycle safety enforcement can be conducted any time of the year, but your department may consider conducting them as part of a larger efforts to promote traffic safety, such as when school begins in the fall or during Pedestrian Safety Month or Bike Safety Month. Third, you will want to consider who to include in your planning of an enforcement operation. Communication is vital to the success of any enforcement operation. Inform the public through social media, news and media partners, and possibly by placing temporary signs. Mentioning the reasons for the enforcement efforts, such as crash statistics, can help promote buy-in from the community. Also work with nearby businesses or schools so they are aware of the enforcement activity and can raise any concerns they may have. Additionally, speak to your command staff and chief prior to conducting the operation so they are aware of the activities and reasons for the enforcement. This will help them answer any questions they may receive from the media, city government, or others. Finally, talk to your local prosecutors in court so they are not caught off guard by an increase in citations and understand that citations are due to a specific enforcement operation. Now that you've gone through these initial steps, you can begin to think about the type of enforcement operation you want to do. The next section covers the details of performing a driver yielding operation, which is a great way to increase safety for pedestrians. A driver yielding enforcement operation is a way to increase safety for pedestrians by increasing driver yielding compliance at crosswalks. Here's how you can conduct this type of enforcement effort in your community. You want to pick a location that is highly visible, including a clear line of sight, well-marked crosswalks, and warning signs indicating a crossing ahead. Mid-block crossings or stop-controlled intersections work best. If you choose a mid-block crossing, you may choose a location that has a pedestrian crossing device installed, such as a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, LED embedded sign, pedestrian hybrid beacon, or similar device. Consideration should also be given to make sure there is a suitable place nearby where drivers can be pulled over so the traffic stop can be conducted safely. Areas with low volume side streets, streets with wide shoulders, or an area with parking lots are good locations. Your city engineering department can assist with identifying a good location. Important items you will want to gather prior to the operation include cameras or position a police car and use the dashboard camera to document violations. Educational materials to distribute to drivers. As mentioned earlier, TTI can provide these handouts if needed. A measuring wheel or laser measuring device. Two-way radios for communication among the enforcement team. The first operation we'll show you is using a staged pedestrian, which would be a non-uniformed officer. This provides a way to ensure a consistent, presentation to approaching drivers and serves to minimize the effects of other potential influencing factors. It can also negate any motorist excuses such as, "I didn't know they were trying to cross," "They weren't in the crosswalk, they were standing on the sidewalk," or "They jumped out in front of me before I could react." A minimum of 2 people is needed to conduct this operation: the stage pedestrian and the officer conducting the traffic stop. The stage pedestrian performs the actual street crossings, while the enforcing officer observes vehicle traffic and stops violators. Additional officers could also be added as designated spotters to look for violators and then radios details to a waiting patrol unit. The use of spotters makes the operation safer by allowing the stage pedestrian to focus solely on crossing the road safely, while the spotter can focus on gathering violator details and forwarding that information to the enforcing officers. The stage pedestrian should be in plain clothes, not in uniform, and should blend in with other pedestrians seen in the area. Identify appropriate times for observation periods. An ideal observation period is one in which vehicle traffic is heavy enough to create frequent yielding opportunities, but not heavy enough to have congestion that will affect speeds. It is preferable to avoid enforcement during times when pedestrian activity is very high, especially if they are using the crosswalk that will be your subject. In addition, conducting enforcement in clear, dry weather is preferred since vehicle stopping distances can become longer on wet pavement. Using a measuring wheel or other measuring device, measure the appropriate distance when a vehicle is considered to be far enough from the crosswalk to be expected to stop. The distance is based on posted speed limit, or PSL. The distance is measured from the crosswalk or advanced yield markings, if present, in each direction of the subject crosswalk, and a distance marker, such as a small landscaping flag, is placed at that location. You can also use the fixed landmarks such as a signpost, utility pole, or tree to serve as your point marker. The stage pedestrian will approach the crosswalk as vehicles approach the marker. The pedestrian will place 1 foot in the crosswalk as vehicles approach the site-appropriate stopping sight distance. This is done so that the legal requirement of having an occupied crosswalk is satisfied. The pedestrian will wait to cross until approaching vehicles yield or until all approaching vehicles have traveled through the crosswalk. The stage pedestrian should not attempt a crossing while other pedestrians are using the crossing, since it will be difficult to tell who the driver is yielding to. The stage pedestrian should also avoid stepping out in front of a long line of cars that are following closely. This could lead to drivers saying they were afraid the cars behind them wouldn't stop. If using a spotter, the spotter's job will be to look for any vehicles that had time to yield but did not. They would call out the vehicle characteristics of any violators via two-way radio to the enforcing officer. It is possible to have multiple violators, especially on roads with higher traffic volumes. Therefore, having more than one enforcing officer is ideal. An additional spotter may be needed on roads with higher traffic volumes and/or multiple lanes to catch more violators. If the road that you are crossing has a median, the vehicles on the other half of the roadway from you would only count as non-yielders once you reach the median and begin to cross onto that half of the roadway. The enforcing officer should be positioned so they can easily pursue any violators that are called out by the spotters. The use of motorcycle units as the enforcing officers may be preferred due to the ease of maneuverability. If you have more than one enforcing officer, it is best to have at least one situated after the crosswalk on each side of the street to catch violators in each direction. If not using a spotter, the enforcing officer will watch for violators and pursue those violators on their own. It is recommended that driver yielding operations have an initial warning and educational phase. This will help to change behavior and educate motorists and builds community trust in the operations. You could also modify this protocol to include recording the yielding of vehicles to regular people, not a stage pedestrian. If this is chosen, it is recommended to keep a close eye on how far back the vehicle was from the crosswalk. If it was beyond the marker, it could have been too quick for the driver to react. An important component of enforcement is education. After making the traffic stop, law enforcement should take a moment to educate the driver. This can include letting the driver know why there is a special enforcement effort in that area, carefully explaining what law was broken, and hand out educational materials. The Texas A&M Transportation Institute has a resource page for law enforcement, which includes tip cards to hand out to other drivers, as well as other resources. You can access this through the direct link or at walkbikesafetexas.org under the Law Enforcement Resources link. For access to crash data resources, you may visit the link shown here.
This video was produced and filmed by the Texas A&M Transportation Institute in partnership with the Texas Department of Transportation through the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's Highway Safety Program.